And then, in a drawn-out, sibilant hiss that sent shivers down the spines of the unseen creatures of the night, the python underwent a breathtaking transformation. Scales shimmered, bones shifted, and in place of the serpentine form stood a strikingly handsome young man. He was tall, impeccably groomed, and exuded an aura of refined elegance. A dark suit, tailored to perfection, draped his frame, hinting at untold wealth. His shoes gleamed like polished obsidian, reflecting the faint moonlight that filtered through the dense canopy. On his wrist, a timepiece encrusted with what looked like genuine diamonds sparkled with icy brilliance. His hair was neatly coiffed, each strand precisely in place, and his face, with its sharp angles and captivating eyes, seemed to have been plucked straight from the pages of a high-fashion magazine. In his right hand he casually carried a black suitcase. It appeared deceptively heavy, suggesting that its contents were both valuable and consequential. A slow, enigmatic smile played upon his lips, a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes, a smile that hinted at secrets carefully guarded. Without so much as a backward glance at the ancient tree that had been his temporary haven, he strode purposefully out of the forest. At the edge of the road, nestled beside a thicket of overgrown bushes, a sleek, black Bentley sat silently, its polished surface reflecting the surrounding darkness like a mirror. Its headlights blinked once, a subtle acknowledgement, as if the car recognized its master's presence. The man opened the driver's side door and slid inside, his movements fluid and graceful. The engine purred to life with a soft, almost sensual growl, a sound that spoke of immense power held in reserve. He adjusted the lapels of his impeccable suit, carefully placed the heavy suitcase on the passenger seat beside him, and then eased the car out onto the open road, driving with the assured confidence of someone who knew exactly where he was going. Lagos throbbed with its characteristic vibrant nightlife. The air crackled with energy, a chaotic symphony of sounds. Music pulsed from countless clubs and bars. Car horns blared in a relentless chorus, and the mingled sounds of laughter, shouts, and dancing filled the air, creating a vibrant tapestry of human activity. Everything swirled together, a heady mix of fire and smoke. The Bentley glided effortlessly through the thronged streets, navigating the chaotic traffic with practiced ease, before finally pulling up in front of a popular nightclub, its facade ablaze with neon lights. Blue and red lights pulsed rhythmically over the entrance, beckoning revelers into its pulsating heart. The man stepped out of the car, and heads turned immediately. Nobody recognized him. He was a stranger in this familiar landscape. Yet, the way he dressed, the effortless grace of his movements, and the sheer extravagance of the car he drove all spoke volumes. It was clear to everyone present that this was a man of considerable wealth and power. He pushed open the heavy club door. A wave of warm, humid air and deafening music crashed over him. The club was a swirling vortex of activity. People were dancing with abandon, drinks flowed freely, and shouts of laughter mingled with the thumping bass of the music. The DJ was spinning a high-energy track, and the crowd was wild, lost in the intoxicating rhythm. The handsome stranger walked with unwavering purpose towards an empty table tucked away in a dimly lit corner. He sat down quietly, placing the suitcase carefully beside him. Though no one knew his name, almost everyone stole surreptitious glances at him. His obvious wealth, his unnerving calm, and his air of impenetrable mystery made him a compelling subject of fascination. Then, his gaze snagged on something that held his attention completely. A young woman was dancing on the elevated stage. She moved with a breathtaking confidence, her body flowing with a natural rhythm that suggested she had been dancing all her life. Her hair bounced freely around her shoulders, her smile was radiant, and her steps were precise and sharp. Bathed in the club's flashing lights, she appeared to glow with an inner radiance. Her name was Julia, and she was a fixture of the Lagos nightlife. Everyone in the club knew her. She was energetic, undeniably pretty, and always the captivating center of attention. But tonight, she had no idea that her life was poised on the precipice of irreversible change. The stranger reached for his suitcase. The moment he flipped it open, The bright lights of the club glinted off its contents, revealing something astonishing. The suitcase was overflowing with cash. Stacks and stacks of crisp banknotes, neatly bundled and packed tightly from one end to the other. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd near the table. One girl shrieked, barely containing her disbelief. "Jez! My goodness!" Another man froze mid-conversation, rubbing his eyes in disbelief, convinced he was caught in some elaborate dream. Nobody knew him. Nobody knew where he came from. And nobody could fathom why he was carrying such an obscene amount of money. But he remained unfazed. He calmly extracted 2 thick bundles of cash and walked purposefully towards Julia. The DJ, sensing a momentous occasion, grabbed the microphone and shouted, "Ah! It may seem as though we have a very big boy in our midst tonight." Julia herself paused mid-step, her movements faltering slightly as she noticed the handsome stranger approaching. Before she could utter a word, the man began to spray her with money. The banknotes rained down around her like a blizzard of green and brown leaves caught in a sudden storm. People screamed in a mixture of shock and delight. Cell phones were instantly drawn, capturing the surreal scene. Videos began to record the unfolding spectacle. The crowd was a sea of confused expressions, murmuring questions. Who is he? Where did he come from? Is that real money? This isn't normal money, is it? Julia's mouth fell open in stunned disbelief. Then, a wide, dazzling smile spread across her face, and she continued to dance as he showered her with money, his movements unwavering. Finally, his pockets emptied. The stranger returned to his seat, the same calm, enigmatic smile gracing his lips. He slowly closed the suitcase, securing its remaining treasure. Julia could no longer contain her curiosity. She leaped off the stage and rushed towards him, her heart pounding with anticipation. She reached his table, pulled out a chair, and sat down directly in front of him, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "I haven't seen you here before," she said, slightly breathless from the combined exertion of dancing and adrenaline. The man looked up at her, his eyes filled with amusement. "My name is Doha." Julia nodded slowly, absorbing the information. There was something undeniably strange about him, an undercurrent of something unsettling, but she was intoxicated by the attention and, of course, by the money. Then, he asked a question that no one in the club, including Julia, could have anticipated. "Will you marry me?" Julia blinked rapidly, her eyes widening in astonishment. She looked as though she had just heard breaking news of global significance. "We just met," she stammered, a nervous laugh escaping her lips. "You don't even know me." "It doesn't matter," Doha replied softly, his voice carrying an unnerving certainty. "Some things are simply meant to be." Julia glanced at the suitcase beside him, still bulging with untold riches. She swallowed hard, trying to regain her composure. Then Doha opened a small velvet box. Inside, nestled against the soft lining, was a diamond ring. Not just any diamond ring, but a breathtakingly beautiful ring that seemed to possess its own internal light, shimmering and sparkling, as if it held a fragment of the sun itself. Doha gracefully went down on one knee, his eyes never leaving hers. The crowd erupted in a cacophony of screams and gasps. Cell phone lights converged on them, turning the intimate moment into a public spectacle. Some women gasped in envy, clutching at their chests. Men shouted in disbelief, struggling to comprehend the unfolding scene. Julia reached out with trembling hands and took the ring, her mouth agape. It's diamond," she exclaimed, her voice filled with awe. Doha nodded once, his expression unreadable. "Yes, it is." She stared at him, then at the ring, then back at the suitcase filled with cash. Then back at him again, her mind reeling. "Yes," she said, almost jumping out of her skin with excitement. "Yes, I will marry you." The crowd roared its approval. People clapped and cheered, their voices blending into a wave of congratulations. The DJ seized the moment, shouting into the microphone, "This one is real love, people, real love." Doha stood up, and Julia threw her arms around him, hugging him tightly. She inhaled his expensive perfume, a scent she couldn't quite place, and felt goosebumps erupting all over her body. Everything was happening at an impossible speed, but she was too caught up in the whirlwind of excitement to care. A few minutes later, Doha picked up his suitcase, his movements calm and deliberate. "I have to go," he said, his voice betraying no emotion. Julia grabbed her bag quickly and stood up to follow him, not wanting the fairy tale to end. But Doha gently stopped her, placing a hand on her arm. "Don't worry, we will see each other tomorrow. Right here. Same place. We will see." There was something strange in the way he repeated the phrase, an unsettling emphasis on the act of seeing. Julia frowned slightly, a flicker of unease crossing her face. "You're leaving alone?" He touched her cheek gently, his fingers surprisingly cold. "Tomorrow," he repeated with a soft smile, his eyes holding a secret she couldn't decipher. She nodded, though a sense of confusion lingered. Doha walked out of the club, the heavy suitcase swinging effortlessly in his hand. Everyone stared at him as he departed, their eyes filled with a mixture of awe and curiosity. Some even followed him outside, eager to discover his destination. But he slipped into his Bentley and drove away before anyone could approach him, leaving a trail of unanswered questions in his wake. He drove back to the same forest from whence he came, the air growing cooler and damper as he left the city behind. He parked the car beside the familiar bushes, opened the door, and stepped out silently. The moment his feet touched the earth, a visible change began to ripple through him. His body began to contort, a horrifying, unnatural process. His hands twisted into claws, his legs folded and fused together. His skin shimmered and shifted, and his expensive suit fell to the forest floor, discarded like a snakeskin. Within seconds, the transformation was complete, and he was once again a python, a massive serpent of shimmering gold. The great snake slithered into the darkness of the forest, disappearing into the undergrowth with the same unnerving calmness he had exhibited earlier. His suitcase vanished with him, absorbed by the shadows. The forest seemed to swallow him whole. But something strange was happening deep inside the forest, near the base of the ancient tree. Something that Julia could never have imagined. And tomorrow, with all its potential for wonder and terror, was coming fast. Julia didn't wait for the club music to fade. She didn't wait to catch her breath. She didn't even wait to say goodbye properly to her friends. She ran home with a single-minded focus, moving with the speed and urgency of someone being chased by the wind. Her heart was pounding, not from fear, but from an overwhelming surge of excitement. She clutched her expensive diamond ring tightly, terrified of losing it. She also carried her small bag with fierce protectiveness, the bag that contained bundles of cash, a generous gift from the mysterious man named Doha. When she reached her house, she burst through the door of their shared room with such force that it slammed against the wall, rattling the window panes. Her two friends, Sonia and Kem, who were sitting on the bed, jumped in surprise, startled by the sudden intrusion. "Julia, what is wrong with you?" Sonia exclaimed, clutching her chest in mock alarm. But Julia was too consumed by her excitement to answer. She stretched out her hand, her fingers splayed apart, displaying the shining diamond ring for their astonished eyes. "Girls, look!" she screamed with unrestrained joy. The ring sparkled like a tiny, captured star on her finger, casting a brilliant light that illuminated the room. Sonia's eyes widened until they seemed as though they might pop out of her head. "Wait, is that a real diamond?" Sonia asked, moving closer for a better look. Julia smiled proudly and nodded emphatically. "Yes, a real diamond. A huge, real diamond." Kem swallowed hard, her expression a mixture of awe and disbelief. "From where? My chops are my." Julia rolled her eyes dramatically, dismissing Kem's skepticism. "Relax. I didn't steal it," she said. "I met a big boy today, a billionaire." Sonia and Kem exchanged bewildered glances, unsure of what to make of Julia's pronouncements. Julia opened her bag and began pulling out bundles of cash, dropping them on the bed as casually as if she were unpacking clothes. The bundles kept coming, an endless stream of crisp banknotes. Sonia and Kem froze, their eyes glued to the growing pile of money. They didn't blink, they didn't move, they barely dared to breathe. What is this? Kem whispered, her voice barely audible. Money, Julia shouted, her voice filled with triumphant glee. He gave me all this money, and he proposed, with this ring. Sonia shook her head slowly, trying to make sense of the unfolding events. Julia, are you sure you didn't go and steal? I didn't steal anything, Julia snapped, her voice laced with irritation. She flipped her long braids over her shoulder and sat proudly on the bed, surveying her newfound wealth. I told you girls to follow me to the club today, but you refused. Now look, I'm not giving you people a dime. Sonia hissed loudly, clearly offended by Julia's sudden boastfulness. Kem, ever the voice of reason, sat up straight. Julia, calm down, Kem said softly. We are happy for you. But I don't think this is okay, Julia frowned. What do you mean? It is too sudden, Kem continued, her brow furrowed with concern. How well do you know this man? Who is he? Where is he from? Where did he get all this money? Immediately, she finished talking. Sonia and Julia shouted at her together. Shut up, Sonia said, her face contorted with annoyance. You don't know anything, Julia added, her voice sharp. Kem fell silent, but she still looked worried, a deep unease settling in her heart. Julia hugged the diamond ring to her chest, smiling dreamily like someone who had just won the lottery. I'm going to marry him, she whispered to herself, her voice filled with awe. My life has changed. But Kem looked away, unable to share in Julia's unbridled joy. Something in her heart felt uneasy, a nagging sense of foreboding. Something about Doha did not feel normal, and she couldn't shake the feeling that Julia was rushing headlong into danger. The next night arrived quickly, cloaking the forest in its familiar darkness. Deep inside, under the same giant tree, something stirred again. The leaves rustled in a sudden, inexplicable gust of wind. The air grew unnaturally still, all sounds fading into an unsettling silence. A long python emerged from the tangled roots of the tree, its golden scales gleaming brighter than before, catching the faint moonlight that filtered through the canopy. Its eyes glowed with an eerie intensity, like two small, burning lamps. Once again, its body began to twist and contort, undergoing the grotesque transformation. Its skin cracked and peeled, its shape stretched and reformed, and slowly, agonizingly, the python morphed back into the handsome man called Doha. Tonight, he wore another expensive suit, even more extravagant than the last. This time, his outfit had a golden touch, subtle hints of gold thread woven into the fabric, and his tie was a shimmering shade of gold silk. Even his new suitcase sparkled like a chest filled with treasure, its surface reflecting the moonlight with dazzling brilliance. He smiled to himself, a predatory gleam in his eyes, and walked towards the road where his Bentley was waiting. He entered the car and drove straight to the nightclub again, his movements imbued with an unnatural grace. Julia was already waiting outside the club with her friends, dressed in a stunning outfit that showed off her best features. She kept looking left and right, her eyes scanning the street, her anticipation growing with each passing moment. That's him. That's him. She suddenly shouted, her voice filled with excitement, when she spotted the Bentley approaching. As soon as Doha parked and stepped out of the car, Julia ran to him like a child running to her father, her arms outstretched. She jumped on him, hugging him tightly, her body pressed against his. But when her skin touched his, she gasped, pulling back slightly. Wait, she said, her brow furrowed with confusion. Why is your body this cold? Doha smiled calmly, his expression unreadable. Oh, it's just the AC in the car. I like it very cold. Julia, eager to dismiss her unease, didn't suspect anything further. She laughed and hugged him again, her earlier apprehension forgotten. Sonia and Kem also greeted him with effusive excitement. Welcome, sir, Sonia said, almost bowing in her eagerness to impress him. Kem greeted him too, offering a hesitant handshake, but her eyes remained fixed on him, a flicker of hidden fear in their depths. The coldness she felt from his handshake was not normal, and it sent a shiver down her spine. When they entered the club, people who had witnessed his extravagant display the previous night began shouting, "Boss! Big man! Man of the night! Spray us again!" Phones were already out, poised to capture another spectacle. People wanted another show, another glimpse of his outrageous wealth. Doha didn't smile, nor did he acknowledge their calls with a spray of cash. He only nodded slightly, a gesture of acknowledgement, and walked inside with Julia holding his arm proudly, basking in the attention he generated. Julia's friends couldn't stop staring at him, their eyes wide with fascination. They treated him like a visiting celebrity, hanging on his every word. While they sat down at their table, Doha leaned back, looked into Julia's eyes, and spoke calmly, his voice carrying an unnerving intensity. "I want to visit your parents tomorrow." Julia screamed, a piercing shriek of pure joy. Sonia screamed, joining in the celebration. Kem screamed too, though her own scream was smaller, more subdued, and laced with worry. They jumped up and danced around like children, their excitement overflowing. Julia kissed Doha's cheek, her eyes sparkling with happiness. "Ah, you're serious? You really want to marry me?" she shouted, barely able to contain her glee. Doha only smiled in a strange, careful way, his expression unreadable. But from a dark corner of the club, two men were watching the unfolding scene with undisguised animosity. They sat in the shadows, shrouded in black coats, their faces obscured by the dim lighting. Smoke curled around them as they puffed silently on cigarettes, their eyes narrowed with resentment. One of them was Dennis, Julia's ex-boyfriend. His eyes were sharp with jealousy, his face etched with bitterness. His friend beside him kept muttering angrily, his voice low and venomous. "Look at her. She has followed another man. A showy big man." Dennis kept staring at Doha, a cold fire burning in his eyes. "That man," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Something is not right about him." But Doha did not look in their direction. He didn't even seem to notice their presence. His attention focused solely on Julia. After a while, Doha stood up, his movements fluid and graceful. "Let's go," he said. Julia grabbed her bag immediately, her heart pounding with anticipation. Sonia and Kem ran after them, eager to be included in whatever adventure awaited. Doha walked out of the club, opened his car door, and motioned for them to enter. "I want to show you something," he said, his voice hinting at a surprise. The girls eagerly piled into the car, their excitement bubbling over. As he drove, the road became quieter and more scenic. The streetlights cast a soft, golden glow, illuminating the lush greenery that lined the road. Expensive houses stood proudly behind tall fences, their manicured gardens overflowing with vibrant flowers. Julia's mouth was wide open in awe as she took in the luxurious surroundings. "Where are we?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Doha stopped in front of a stunning duplex. The house looked brand new, its walls gleaming white under the soft light, and a small, meticulously maintained garden adorned the front. He stepped out of the car and pointed at it. "I bought this house," he said softly, his voice laced with quiet pride. "And it is in your name, Julia." Julia screamed so loudly that even the gate shook. "Oh my God!" she cried, her voice filled with disbelief and joy. She ran to him and hugged him tightly, her legs leaving the ground as she wrapped herself around him. Sonia and Kem clapped their hands, shaking their heads in disbelief at the sheer extravagance of Doha's gesture. Kem whispered to Sonia, her voice filled with concern. "This is too much, too fast, too strange." But Julia didn't hear anything. She was too caught up in the moment, dancing around the compound, touching the walls, opening the gate, closing it again, and laughing like a child. She jumped on Doha again, wrapping her arms around his neck and showering him with kisses. "I love you. I love you," she shouted, her voice filled with unrestrained joy. Doha held her gently, his touch strangely cold. But his smile was not a normal smile. It was the smile of someone who was hiding something huge, something dangerous, something Julia was not ready for. And deep inside the forest, the giant tree trembled slightly, its ancient roots groaning under the strain, as if something was waking up, as if something was watching, as if tomorrow would not be normal. The following week was like a dream for Julia, a whirlwind of extravagance and romance. From the moment Doha said he wanted to marry her, everything happened at an impossible speed, too fast for rational thought. But nobody cared, or nobody dared to voice their concerns. Doha had money, more than enough money to silence any doubts, and in the eyes of many people, money was more important than questions. Julia's parents were ecstatic, their faces beaming with pride. Her father kept smiling from morning till night, his eyes twinkling with delight. Her mother walked around the compound, bragging to the neighbors about her daughter's good fortune. "My daughter is marrying a rich man," she said to anyone who cared to listen, her voice filled with triumphant glee. "A billionaire. God has done it." Her friends Sonia and Kim helped with every wedding preparation, caught up in the excitement and glamour of the occasion. Sonia was proud to be seen with a friend who had suddenly become a big woman, a woman of wealth and influence. Kim, however, still harbored a strange, nagging feeling about everything, a sense of unease that she couldn't quite shake, but she kept her reservations to herself, not wanting to dampen Julia's happiness. The wedding day arrived in a blaze of glory. It was a grand, extravagant affair, a testament to Doha's immense wealth. It was loud, colorful, and overflowing with opulence. Expensive decorations adorned every surface, transforming the venue into a fairy tale wonderland. Luxury cars lined up outside, a gleaming display of automotive excess. People from far and near gathered to witness the spectacle, their eyes wide with awe. Musicians sang and played, filling the air with festive melodies. Cameras flashed constantly, capturing every moment of the unforgettable day. Food and drinks flowed freely, an endless feast for the senses. Julia wore a breathtakingly beautiful wedding gown that sparkled like fresh snow, its delicate lace shimmering with countless tiny crystals. Doha stood beside her, resplendent in white and gold, his handsome face radiating an air of quiet confidence. His smile never left his face, but there was something unsettling about it, a subtle hint of something hidden beneath the surface. But something was strange, very strange indeed. No single member of Doha's family attended the wedding. Not his father, not his mother, not a sibling, not a cousin, not even a distant relative. It was as if he had materialized from thin air, with no past and no connections. People whispered amongst themselves, their voices hushed with curiosity. Where is his family? How can a man so rich come alone? Maybe they live abroad. Maybe they couldn't travel. But after one look at all the money that had been lavished on the wedding, everyone quickly forgot their questions. Some people even said, their eyes gleaming with avarice, "Who needs his family when he has this kind of money?" Nobody wondered where he came from. Nobody asked for his background. Nobody checked his story. They were too busy eating, dancing, taking pictures, and enjoying the show, blinded by the allure of wealth and status. Even Julia, caught up in the whirlwind of romance and luxury, didn't care about the lack of family. Love and money had covered her eyes, obscuring the warning signs. When the wedding ended, Julia and Doha moved into their new, beautiful duplex, their dream home. Julia's pride swelled like a balloon, inflating her ego to new heights. Everywhere she passed, people stared at her with envy and admiration. She walked with so much confidence that even her shadow seemed to swagger. She would smile and say to her friends, her voice dripping with self-importance, "I am now a big woman. My husband is a billionaire. Everything I want, he will buy for me." But deep down, beneath the layers of expensive clothes and glittering jewelry, she didn't know the truth about the man she had married. She had no idea of the darkness that lurked beneath his charming facade. At first, the marriage seemed perfect, a fairy tale come true. Doha bought her expensive clothes, designer shoes, and glittering jewelry. He filled the house with lavish gifts, showering her with material possessions. He gave her money, endless amounts of money, fulfilling her every whim. He treated her gently, with an almost reverential respect, making her feel like a queen. But one strange thing kept happening, a recurring anomaly that cast a shadow over their idyllic life. Every night, without fail, Doha disappeared. He never slept in the house. Julia would dress up for bed, eager to spend the night with her new husband, and then enter the room to find him dressed in his suit, ready to leave. "Baby, are you not sleeping yet?" she would ask, her voice filled with disappointment. And he would reply calmly, his expression unreadable, "No, I have to travel to Ghana tonight." At first, she was shocked, her mind struggling to comprehend his words. "Ghana every night? Why Ghana?" And Doha would answer with unwavering composure, "I have a factory there. I must check it every night. By morning I will be back." Out of a mixture of excitement and naivety, Julia accepted his explanation without question. She didn't ask what kind of factory he owned. She didn't ask for its name. She didn't ask for any details about his business. She didn't ask how he traveled to Ghana and returned in a few hours, an impossible feat by any conventional means. She simply believed everything he said because the money was too intoxicating, blinding her to reason and logic. When he left every night, she would smile at herself in the mirror and say, "My husband is a hard-working billionaire. Let him work. I will enjoy the money." But Julia did not know that Doha wasn't going to Ghana. He was going back into the forest, back to the big tree, back to his true form. Every night, under the pale light of the moon, he would change into a python and crawl into the shadows of the forest, embracing his serpentine identity. Julia had no idea of his secret life until one fateful night. It was around 11 p.m. Julia was in the bathroom of their luxurious bedroom, meticulously performing her elaborate skincare routine. She held a large mirror in her hand, examining her face under the bright lights. The bathroom light was intense, illuminating every detail. The mirror reflected everything clearly, providing a perfect view of her surroundings. She was humming softly to herself, lost in her thoughts, when she heard the door open with a soft click. "Baby, is that you?" she asked, assuming it was Doha. There was no answer. The silence stretched, filling the room with an unnerving tension. She continued applying her cream, trying to dismiss the strange feeling that had settled over her. Then, she lifted the mirror to check her face, to smooth out the lines and wrinkles that she feared were beginning to appear. What she saw reflected behind her in the mirror made her freeze, her blood turning to ice in her veins. Her heart stopped for a moment, her breath catching in her throat. In the mirror, standing silently behind her, was Doha, who wanted to tell her he was leaving for the night, but he was not normal. From the waist down, the mirror showed a long, thick python tail, golden and shiny, its scales shimmering in the light. The tail moved slowly, sinuously, as if it were alive, its movements radiating an aura of ancient power. Julia stared in shock, her eyes wide with terror, her mouth agape, but no sound coming out. Her hands began shaking so violently that she dropped the mirror, the glass shattering on the tiled floor with a deafening crash. She slowly turned around, her body trembling uncontrollably. Doha stood there, seemingly unaffected by the chaos. "Is everything okay?" he asked, his voice calm and even. He looked completely normal, his handsome face betraying no sign of the monstrous form she had just witnessed in the mirror. No tail, no scales, no snake-like appearance, just the familiar face of the man she had married. "Baby," he said in a soothing voice, his eyes watching her intently. Julia stepped back, fear consuming her entire being. I saw something in the mirror," she stammered, her voice barely audible. "Maybe it's my imagination. I'm sure it was." Doha blinked slowly, his gaze unwavering. His calm smile disappeared for the first time since she had met him, replaced by a look of chilling intensity. His eyes sharpened, their depths revealing something ancient and malevolent. "It was," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. Without saying another word, he stepped out of the bathroom and closed the door behind him, his movements swift and silent. Then he disappeared. Not by walking away, not by running, not by jumping. He simply vanished, as if he had stepped into a shadow, and the shadow had swallowed him whole. One moment he was there, the next he was gone, leaving no trace of his presence. Julia stumbled backwards, pushing her back against the bathroom wall, her body convulsing with shivers. Her legs felt weak, unable to support her weight. Her whole body trembled uncontrollably. That night, she could not sleep. She paced around the room, her mind racing with terrifying images. She kept checking the other mirror in the bedroom again and again, driven by a morbid curiosity. Afraid to look, yet equally afraid not to look, she was trapped in a cycle of fear and uncertainty. Her heart kept pounding with one agonizing question. Was it my imagination? Had she hallucinated the whole thing? Morning came, bringing with it a fragile sense of normalcy. Doha returned as if nothing had happened, his demeanor calm and unruffled. He wore another expensive suit, impeccably tailored, his appearance as polished and perfect as always. "Good morning, my love," he said, smiling gently. Julia's breath hitched in her throat. The image of the serpentine tail, shimmering gold in the bathroom mirror, refused to leave her mind. She wanted to ask him about it, to confront him with what she had seen, but she stayed quiet, fear paralyzing her vocal cords. Doha touched her cheek gently, his fingers sending a shiver down her spine. "Why do you look scared?" he asked, his eyes searching hers. Julia forced a smile, trying to mask her terror. I didn't sleep well." Doha nodded, his expression unreadable. "It is fine. Prepare yourself. We will go somewhere tonight." "Where?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You will see." His smile was soft, almost tender, but something in his eyes looked sharper than before, a predatory glint that sent a jolt of fear through her. Almost as if he knew she had seen something, as if he was aware of her growing suspicion, and was waiting for her to make a move. Julia swallowed hard, her throat dry with apprehension. Her life had changed irrevocably, transformed in ways she could never have imagined. But she didn't know if it was for better or for something far more dangerous. And somewhere deep inside the forest, the giant tree stirred again, its ancient branches creaking and groaning, as if something bigger was waking up, something connected to Doha, something ancient and powerful, something Julia was not ready to face. Would you like to see another episode of this story? Please subscribe and tell us in the comments where you are watching from.